time is 5:30 and we have a quorum present. So I will call the meeting of the August 23rd Plan Commission to order. Jesse Poole, our technical facilitator, will provide some information for us.
All right, welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak. The name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. The next item on our agenda is public comment. I don't believe we have anything for public comment. Confirmed by Heather Stouter. Thank you. The next item is communications, disclosures, and recusals. Members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do we have any disclosures or recusals? Seeing none, we will move on to the minutes of August 9th, the regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. I will assume unanimous consent of the motion to approve the minutes unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the minutes pass unanimously. Next on the agenda is the schedule of upcoming meetings. We have regular meetings on September 20th, October 4th, and October 18th. We have two upcoming special meetings. One is the Urban Design Commission virtual tour on August 25th at 4:30. I would really encourage any of you on the Plan Commission who can attend that virtual meeting to do so. It is really quite instructive and enlightening to see the outcome of some of the projects that we have considered and approved. So I would encourage you, if you can, to do that. And then we have a Plan Commission work session on September 30th at 5 o'clock. Okay, next then we have new business. Agenda item 2, Legistar 66098, adopting the Odana area plan as a supplement to the comprehensive plan and directing staff to implement the recommendations included in the plan. I see that Heather has her hand raised. Heather, do you have something to add?
Just briefly, Chair Zellers, would it make sense to take up consent agenda items at this point?
We could do that, and that would allow our attendees that have items on the consent agenda to go ahead and exit. So let's do that. I will read the agenda items that are on the consent agenda. The agenda items are item 6, 7, which is newly added, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 are all currently on the consent agenda. So the consent agenda are items that staff believes an application has had sufficient review to warrant approval with all of the conditions placed upon it by various city departments and on which the applicant accepts those conditions. And there are no registrants, no individuals who have registered to speak in opposition to the item. Plan Commission members do have an option of requesting separation, in which case the item is removed from the consent agenda and taken in the regular course of business. Do any Plan Commissioners wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing no raised hands, I will read the items then on the consent agenda into the record. The first one is agenda item 6, Legistar 66549, located at 421 Charmony Drive, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the traditional shopping street district for a mixed-use building with greater than 48 dwelling units. Consideration of a conditional use in the same district for a building exceeding 3 stories and 40 feet in height, in consideration of conditional use in that same district for an outdoor eating area for a food and beverage establishment. Consideration of a conditional use in the same district for outdoor recreation, and consideration of a conditional use also in the traditional shopping street district for a private parking facility to allow construction of a 6-story mixed-use building with 179 dwelling units and 4,400 square feet of retail space. The next item on the consent agenda is agenda item 7, Legistar 65849, located at 425 Charmony Drive, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the traditional employment district for a building exceeding 68 feet in height, and consideration of a conditional use in the traditional employment district for general retail and/or food and beverage uses to allow construction of a 5-story laboratory building with a first-floor retail restaurant tenant space. Agenda item 9, Legistar 66551, located at 515 through 527 South Gammon Road, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the commercial center district for a vehicle access sales and service window for a restaurant tenant in a multi-tenant commercial building. Agenda item 10, Legistar 66552, located at 521 North Sherman Avenue, 12th Alder District. Consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for an outdoor cooking operation located within 200 feet from the property line of a lot with a residential use, and consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for outdoor eating areas for a restaurant tavern to allow an existing commercial building to be converted into a restaurant tavern with an outdoor oven and 2 outdoor eating areas. Agenda item 11, Legistar 66553, located at 718 Deerholt Road, 10th Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a single-family residence and construct a new single-family residence. Agenda item 12, Legistar 66554, located at 910 Pebble Beach Road, 19th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the suburban residential consistent 1 district to construct an accessory building exceeding 1,000 square feet. Agenda item 13, Legistar 66555, located at 1123 Merrill Springs Road, 19th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the suburban residential consistent district to construct an accessory building exceeding 800 square feet. Agenda item 14, Legistar 66556, located at 1915 South Stoughton Road, 16th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the Industrial Limited District for a brewery in an existing building. Agenda item 15, Legistar 66558, located at 2737 Myrtle Street, 12th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent 4 district to construct an accessory building exceeding 10% of lot area. Agenda item 16, Legistar 66559, located at 5521 Odana Road, 19th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial quarter transitional district for a limited production and processing, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for a wholesale bakery, consideration of a conditional use in that same district for a vehicle access sales and services window, and consideration of a conditional use also in the commercial corridor transitional district for an outdoor eating area to allow a former bank in a multi-tenant commercial center to be converted into a wholesale bakery and coffee shop with drive-through window and outdoor eating area. Agenda item 17, Legistar 66591, located at 1040 Williamson Street, 6th Alder District, consideration of a conditional use in the traditional residential consistent district to construct an accessory building with an accessory dwelling unit. Agenda item 18, Legistar 66594, located at 1435 Morrison Street, 6th Alder District, consideration of a demolition permit and get conditional use to demolish an existing 2-unit residence and construct a new single-family residence on a lakefront parcel. And then under land division, agenda item 19, Legistar 66987, located at 5048 Thorson Road, Town of Sun Prairie, reapproval of a certified survey map within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction to create 2 residential lots. Are there any questions on any of those items? I will open the public hearing and ask if there is a motion to approve. Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. I will close the public hearing. Any other input? If not, we will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent on the consent agenda unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hand to object, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, now back to our non-consent item agenda, which is under new business. Agenda item 2, Legistar 66098, adopting the Odana area plan as a supplement to the comprehensive plan and directing staff to implement the recommendations contained in the plan. And I believe that we do have a presentation by Ben Zellers. Ben, do you want to raise your hand so I can unmute you?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and dive right in, share my screen here. So I'll be presenting just a quick summary of the Odana area plan this evening. My colleagues Dan McAuliffe and Urvashi Martin, also on the team, Odana area plan team, are here in the meeting as well. And so I'll really just go through and touch on a few different things. As you know, we had a Plan Commission update back in June. Not a whole lot has changed since then. The few edits that have been made to the plan are summarized in the memo, as are the points that were discussed and included in motions with the committees that this was referred to. So just a real quick refresher, this is the area we're talking about. It's about 1,100 acres, which is about twice as big as downtown. So includes Research Park all the way west to West Town Mall and the interchange of the Beltline and Mineral Point Road. As far as the approval timeline, the plan was introduced at Council on July 6th. We visited the Economic Development Committee. EDC had, as mentioned in your memo, requested equity review of the plan itself, and so that's being performed currently and will be ready in time for council consideration on the 21st of September. August 11th, we visited the Board of Park Commissioners. They recommended approval. August 16th, visited Transportation Policy and Planning Board, and they asked for a review of whether or not some of the bike paths that are included in the plan should be officially mapped. We kind of ran through that in the memo. Can talk about that a little bit more with reference to a map later on. Here with you tonight and anticipating hopefully going to Council on September 21st for their consideration. So future land use map remains the same as it was before. No real tweaks coming out of the Plan Commission discussion previously. So we still have the commercial core area kind of along Odana Road extended, if and when that connection does happen. And then at Odana Road and Whitney Way, those being the areas that we're recommending really for active ground floor commercial uses, with the rest of the areas in those various purple mixed use shades being open and available to a mix of uses, possibly in close proximity to each other, but not requiring them in individual buildings. Then we have those two park overlay areas. I'll talk about those a little bit more in a slide or two. Then we have those yellow outlines as well, where we're recommending mixed use, but residential or employment only. So to kind of have that employment residential mixed use in those areas, but not have that retail kind of off of the main thoroughfares. So just summarizing the Odana Area Plan recommended changes to the comprehensive plan's future land use. This shows in green the previous comprehensive plan designation. So for example, the westernmost portion had been designated RMU, showing that as CMU in this Odana Area Plan. By and large, opening up a few additional areas to mixed use development, with some other tweaks in a few other areas around the plan. As far as building heights, generally trying to match the tallest potential maximum building heights with bus rapid transit and just general transit use. So really kind of around the current west transfer point that may or may not remain exactly where it is, but we think Whitney Way will remain a good transit corridor. And then along the future planned bus rapid transit line along Mineral Point Road with the station shown in blue. As far as parks, open space, stormwater, showing those two general future park areas. Just really want to emphasize that both of those areas are plan for ideally future park space up to 5 acres in the westernmost portion, potentially up to 10 acres or so in the central portion. And that would be implemented through either dedication as property owners opt to build residential units, or through a negotiation with willing property owners who are looking to sell property to the city. And that could be acquired through park impact fees. As far as paths, pedestrians, and bicycle network, again, basically the same as has been shown before. Made some very minor tweaks to the street network, basically the same network overall, but just slightly tweaking the alignment, mainly in the West Town area, just to kind of show a little bit of space in between the mall itself and the proposed future street network. But as far as the bike and path network, really the same as the commission had seen previously. And would refer to your memo as far as kind of the summary of staff did with reviewing potential official mapping of bike path network with engineering. As far as the street network itself, as I mentioned, really just those few slight alignment tweaks around the mall itself. The rest of the network is essentially the same as the commission had seen previously. We do have that split in between planned street connection for official mapping and just the plain vanilla planned street connection. I would just emphasize and stress that even for the ones shown as planned street connection for official mapping, after the plan is adopted, it would still take an additional step to do that official mapping. And that would involve the Plan Commission and Council approval later on, if and when that step does proceed. So simply adopting the plan doesn't take the action of official mapping. So as far as proactive rezoning and official mapping, just to kind of emphasize that this is being shown in the plan to encourage redevelopment that's consistent with the plan by simplifying the development process, discouraging development that's detrimental to the character that's recommended by the plan. And so proactive rezoning and official mapping is a recommendation of potential future actions that would be considered both not only for official mapping, but also for proactive rezoning. That would also take consideration by the Plan Commission and Council through a future process to undertake that rezoning. So the plan approval doesn't change any zoning or officially mapped areas at all as part of this process. As far as proactive rezoning, this is the probably biggest thing that's new to this plan draft. So we had proceeded with the Plan Commission's direction in developing this map after the last meeting and are showing potential future proactive rezoning for the areas outlined in white to regional mixed use in most cases. And that allows for more intensive development that is a little bit more urban in nature. And so we're showing that for an area west of West Town Mall for the big box stores and the mall itself, a portion along Mineral Point Road in a few different spots. And then also showing potentially some proactive rezoning to the south of kind of CUNA into CCT and SE from the current MXC designation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the Commission for any public testimony and any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ben. First, I will note that we do have a couple of registrants. Mara Esch, Pontiac Trail, Madison, opposed, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Joe Dupree, West Town Mall, Madison, neither support nor oppose, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there any questions of either of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, let's go to questions of staff. Commissioner Fernandez.
I'm wondering if you could explain just in a little bit more detail the relationship between this proactive rezoning on the plan and the actual rezoning process. I realize that this would not, by adopting the plan, we wouldn't be we wouldn't be adopting the rezoning. But at the time of the rezoning, if something were to fail in the rezoning, would that require a modification of the plan? Just a little more explanation of what's the relationship between that, and the same question really with regard to official mapping.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Is
Ben.
there legal force to this plan, or that's what I'm trying to understand a little bit.
So the plan doesn't necessarily require that the city proceed with rezoning or official mapping as exactly shown in the plan. It's a policy document that provides guidance and direction to both property owners and future developers, as well as city staff. So if there is something that you see in there that you're wondering about specifically, with whether or not what we're showing for potential proactive rezoning is appropriate, or same with the street network, then certainly bring those up now. But as far as the proactive rezoning, it would be essentially the same process that typical rezoning, property owner rezoning would have to go through. It would just be city staff kind of bringing that to the fore for consideration by the Plan Commission, in coordination and discussion with property owners in some cases. So I don't know if Heather or Dan has anything to add to that.
Heather?
Sure, quickly, and that was great, Ben. I think often when we delve into the details of officially mapping and proactive rezoning, it takes a little bit longer than we anticipate up front. And I'll just share, the two examples that have been before you in some form recently. One is the Milwaukee Street Special Area Plan, which, just a few months ago, we were able to get council approval for the official mapping of just the most critical streets within that plan area. And then rezoning of large blocks as well, sort of the most critical rezonings within the area. We're still working to finalize a rezoning and official mapping package for introduction on the Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan. And that's been adopted now, as you know, for about a year. But in working carefully with other city agencies, developing the legal descriptions for the areas to be rezoned and officially mapped, and especially working with property owners on the details, these things can take some time. And so I think what we want to do is lay out a predictable path forward within this plan so that the Plan Commission and Council know what to anticipate coming forward in the coming months with regard to those legal tools of official mapping and rezoning.
Thank you, Heather. It looks like Dan McAuliffe has something he wants to add to. Dan?
Sure, thank you. And just to clarify with the correct rezonings and official mappings in this particular case, most of the areas that are being recommended for proactive rezoning have a similar zoning designation, either a CC or CCT, and moving it, the recommendation is generally moved to an RFX, which does provide a little bit more intense development. However, if those actions don't occur, and those properties are still able to redevelop to the extent of the plan recommendations, they would just need to go through an extra step to achieve those rezonings as part of their development process.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any other questions of staff? Commissioner Cantrell.
There was a quite lengthy letter from Westtown attorneys regarding the official mapping of some of the streets in that area, about a taking of, if we officially mapped it, it would be a taking. And I know that adopting this plan doesn't officially map it. The city and the council and the plan commission would have to consider that in the future. But I'm assuming, and I know it's in the state statutes of official mapping, but I'm assuming that staff has researched this thoroughly to determine that we are on solid ground when we do this. Dan McAuliffe?
Yes. So shortly before the meeting with the Economic Development Committee, staff received a communication from then Assistant City Attorney John Strange, who is no longer with us, no longer with the city, just to clarify. And he, in that memo, I don't have it in front of me, but he did basically say that, yes, simply adopting the plan with a recommendation to rezone an official map is not considered taking. And further, it was his opinion that the official mapping that is recommended would not go so far to create a taking. And I'm sure if you get two lawyers, they can both have different opinions, but that is what's in front of us right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions, Commissioner?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Solheim.
Thank you. Something that we talked about when we saw the earlier draft and that's mentioned in here is exploring bonus stories for affordable, as well as developments that include green features. I was just wondering kind of on the timing of that and when you expect to take a look at that. And would it be implemented, just in this plan area? Do you expect that would apply to other parts of the city as well?
Staff, who wants to take that? Heather.
Sure, I can give this a try. It's a really thorny issue, and I know we've talked about it at some length before. But one of the biggest challenges with providing bonus stories for things that may or may not be permanent is that we really lack a way to enforce the reason for the bonus stories over time. And affordable housing is one example. If a particular building, let's say it's in an 8-story height limit area where one could request 10 stories if they include X percentage of affordable housing. If at some point in the future, without city funding in the mix, if at some point in the future, those affordable units or income restricted units are shifted to market rate units, then the city can't practically remove the 2 stories above 8. I mean, it's a little bit funny to imagine that and to say that, but that's, in a sense, that's the issue that we're facing. And even with sustainability features that, maybe the applicant is committed to doing them, but whether in implementation or years later, that changes. And, they're either never installed or they're removed, et cetera. It's really impossible to take away those additional stories. And so we've struggled. We've talked at length with the city attorney's office about this and haven't come up with a good solution yet regarding bonus stories.
Okay, thank you. I understand the thorniness.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Did you have anything else, Commissioner Solheim? No. Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, I would be looking for a motion. Commissioner Cantrell.
Well, I'll recommend that the Plan Commission recommend that the council, Common Council, adopt the Odana area plan.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Fernandez. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, I think that this is a good plan, and I applaud city staff and the other committees that have worked on the plan, because I think this is a very important one. Easttown and Westtown and this area is going to see a considerable amount of redevelopment. And I think this plan provides a good foundation for the city to move forward, not only in the Westtown area, but along the corridor where we're planning to have the BRT and other sites along within that area. So I, again, applaud the city staff and those other individuals that have participated in the planning process.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Are there other comments or input? Seeing none, we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for a good plan. Appreciate it. The next items on the agenda are public hearing items, and agenda items 3 and 4 are to be considered together. Agenda item 3, Legistar 66983, located at 1858 through 1890 East Washington Avenue, Urban Design District 8, Alder District 12, consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a multi-tenant commercial building and an auto repair station, consideration of a conditional use to construct a mixed-use building with greater than 60 dwelling units in the commercial corridor transitional district, consideration of a conditional use in the commercial corridor transitional district for a building exceeding 5 stories and 78 feet in height, and consideration of a conditional use in that same district for outdoor recreation for the purposes of reconsidering the conditions of approval for a recently approved 6-story mixed-use building with approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial space and 290 apartments. Agenda item 4, Legistar 66560, reapproving a certified survey map of property owned by TDW Hartford LLC, also located at 1858 through 1890 East Washington Avenue, 12th Alder District, with revised conditions. And I believe we're going to get a brief overview by Tim Parks. Tim.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Plan Commission. Just briefly, items 3 and 4 were before you at your July 26th meeting regarding demolition of the Fiore Shopping Center at 1858 East Washington and an auto repair station at 1890 East Washington for the purposes of redeveloping the 3.45 acre site with the 6-story mixed-use building containing 15,000 square feet of commercial space and 290 apartments at the corner of North First Street. The project and related one-lot certified survey map were approved unanimously by the Plan Commission at the July 26th meeting. However, following that meeting, the applicant, Mr. Steve Doran of Galway Companies, Inc., contacted the city about his ability to meet some of the conditions of approval, most notably a requirement that along both North First Street and East Washington Avenue, there be a 10-foot multi-purpose path / sidewalk and an 8-foot terrace and also a 1-foot buffer for future maintenance needs. And meetings were held and it basically turned out that it was not possible to accommodate the 10-foot path / sidewalk, 8-foot terrace and buffer while meeting Urban Design District 8, as well as some other requirements on the project and being able to build the project as it was approved by the Plan Commission on July 26th. So subsequently, we had a series of meetings with the design team and Mr. Doran and work through a revised set of conditions that city staff believes are acceptable to require a minimum 8-foot wide multi-purpose path or sidewalk along both frontages and a minimum 5-foot terrace along both frontages. You'll note in your plan materials for tonight's meeting that sheets A101 and A360 reflect the negotiated changes to the right-of-way condition adjacent to the project. And the Plan Commission should note that the minimum 8-foot path and minimum 5-foot terrace are, the most minimal condition proposed. There are areas where the sidewalk will be wider than 8 feet. There will be spaces where the terrace will be as wide as 8 feet as previously recommended. It just was not possible, according to the applicant, to meet those conditions universally across both frontages on First Street and East Washington. And I believe Mr. Doran will be addressing that more specifically during his testimony here in a moment. So the project that is before the Plan Commission tonight is effectively the same project on private property as what the Plan Commission saw 4 weeks ago. However, the conditions of approval have been modified to reflect the negotiated outcome, if you will, for the 8-foot minimum sidewalk and 5-foot minimum terrace. Staff is recommending approval of the project subject to a new slate of conditions instead of trying to revise the conditions from July 26th or insert new conditions. We just basically are proposing a brand new slate of conditions, approximately 90% of which are exactly the same as they were 4 weeks ago. But with the changes to the right-of-way, including a series of new major non-standard comments from the city forestry section, which are included in the materials. Those comments are bolded in the recommendation section. They are also major non-standard comments in gray boxes for the Plan Commission. So just in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the Galway mixed-use project for First and East Washington. As it was before you on July 26th, however, we are recommending it with revised conditions to reflect what we worked out at a staff level with the applicant in light of the concerns that were expressed. I'll also note that Chris Pedikowski from the City Engineering Division is here if there are more technical questions about the work in the right-of-way, but staff feels that the standards can be met for the demolition and conditional uses for the project and are recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We will now go to the public hearing. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Steve Doran, Broadway, Monona, Wisconsin. He did not indicate that he's representing anybody or any organization. Steve, would you please clarify? I do believe that you're representing the developer or are the developer or owner?
Sure. Sorry about that. I am the developer, so I'm representing myself.
Thank you. You do have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Tim, do you have the plan that you're able to bring up? That might help as well. Would you mind going to the site plan, Tim? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, Tim, would you mind going to the site plan? Oh, there you go.
I think Tim has something to say, Chair. I'll pause the timer.
Just having some trouble pulling up Mr. Doran's plans, but if you'll give me just a second, I will get those pulled up. Just need a second.
Okay.
And I raised my hand, but it wasn't getting called on, which is why I was pointing to my hand. So this Zoom stuff is so much fun. We should do it for another year, don't you think?
Well, they changed the color, at least on mine, of the hands, and it's kind of hard to see them.
All right, here we go.
So, Steve, we will start your 3 minutes when this comes up.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, great. So thank you, Tim, for the overview. And as Tim, I'll just add a couple of things that Tim mentioned. After the Plan Commission meeting, we recognized we were not able to meet the 10-foot path and 8-foot terrace for a few distinct reasons. One, UDD8 requires the building to be no more than 15 feet from the property line. So meeting a 10-foot path and 8-foot terrace would be in violation of that. In addition, we have this unique requirement with this site with a significant grade from the east to the west side of the site. We are unable to lower the building any more than 852 feet. And what that's done is it puts the grade of the corner level with the sidewalk and then creates a situation on the west side of the site where it's slightly elevated by about 5 feet. And working with UDC, they wanted that to be permeable and accessible to the public. So we created this nice welcoming terrace on that side. And with this revised plan, we were able to skinny that down a little bit and accommodate an 8-foot multi-use path and a 5-foot terrace at the minimum location on the southwest corner of the site. As we worked east, we widened that out to a 10-foot terrace, a 10-foot path and an 8-foot terrace on the corner of First Street and East Washington Avenue. And then as it works north on First Street, we have, it skinnies back down to as small as an 8-foot multi-use path and a 6-foot terrace. We did check the plans for the public market. The public market was approved with an 8-foot multi-use path and a minimum 5-foot terrace. So our plan does match up with the public market. There wouldn't be a shifting of a multi-use path to smaller on our site from the public market. That would be the same. And the other thing we did is worked with forestry and staff along the East Wash side. With the terrace being a little bit smaller, we're going to put all those trees in grates with silvicels to ensure those trees grow and flourish long term, just because they have a little bit tighter an area. The other item that we had to ask for relief on was on the original plan. On the north side of the site, we had a small landscape island. And there's an easement with MMSD on that north side of the site that restricts us from having anything in it. So on the north side of the site, we had to remove that landscaping to ensure that their trucks could service the MMSD sewer main without any landscaping in it whatsoever. So I'm available for questions, but I think Tim answered most all of them that I had comments on.
Okay, thank you, Steve. The next registrant is Adam Friedenhall, JLA Architects, Broadway, Madison, in support, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. And finally, D. Henry, Fordham Avenue, Madison, opposed, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Questions of any of the registrants? Commissioner Fernandez.
One question. It looked to me on the site plan like a portion of the sidewalk is outside the right of way, is on private property. Is that true, or is there a dedication that's associated with this that is going to bring all of that sidewalk into public property?
So, Steve, could you respond to that?
Was the question, is the sidewalk on public property or on our property?
Correct. As I see the picture, it looks like the property line runs partially down the middle of the 8-foot sidewalk, placing a portion of that sidewalk on private property and a portion on public. Is that the actual proposal?
Adam, can you clarify that one for me?
So Adam Friedenhall, who is registered, could we unmute him?
Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Super. You are correct. The property line, as the site is right now, is at the back of sidewalk. So that straddling line is in the effort to make the path wider as a multi-use path, but there is 3 feet of it is on private property.
Well, that answers my question of the developer. I guess I have a question of staff with regard to that.
Okay, when we get to staff questions, then we'll get that question. I see that Chris Pedikowski does have his hand raised. Chris, let's wait until we're into questions by staff, and we'll look to you for some information. Are there any other questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I'll close the public hearing. Now let's go to questions of staff. Commissioner Fernandez, did you have something that you wanted then to ask staff? Go ahead.
That question right there is, you know, if the property line runs down the center of the sidewalk, you know, is there easement, provision, agreement of some sort that would enable the city to, you know, to maintain that if necessary, or what, you know, just, would not be a normal situation from my experience. And the other one, this is going to sound, I'm sorry, Chris, a little bit like a bike path geek here, but I've heard it referred to several times as a multi-use path. And in my experience, I would make a distinction between a multi-use path and a sidewalk, because a multi-use path typically has design standards, greater design standards, geometric standards, clearance, you know, standards either side of it. So typically an 8-foot multi-use path would occupy at least 12 feet of public land, because a 2-foot buffer on either side of it would be a standard. So I'm wondering why, if there's some confusion here. To me, this looks like it's going to be a sidewalk and not a multi-use path. So that's maybe a slightly geeky question, but the more important one for me is I don't think I've ever seen a public path or sidewalk that is on private land without some provision for the public to have rights on there.
So Tim or Chris, you want to raise your hand, whoever is going to answer that? Chris.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so Tony, to answer the first question, item number 28 is the corresponding comment for the easement. So they're to provide a public pedestrian and bike path easement as necessary to create the 8-foot path and terrace. So essentially, you know, those two comments go hand in hand. So there would be a new easement that is corresponding to the layout of the new path/sidewalk. So that would give the, you know, public the rights to use it. And then as far as the terminology, yeah, it is more of a wide sidewalk. We did use the word multi-use path just to more or less let people know that it's bikeable. You know, it's not just only for walking, but point taken.
Did you have any further questions, Commissioner Fernandez?
No, that answered them very well. And just, yeah, really pleased that there's an easement covering that. That's the most important thing in my mind.
Okay, thank you. Are there, Alder Heck?
Thank you. Tim Parks might be able to answer this. I just want to make sure I understand the situation with the street trees. And it's mentioned that there may be more of them depicted on the plan than may be allowed or recommended by forestry. And I guess I want to know why is that? Is it a matter of distance? Is it because of between the trees, or is it because of infrastructure not allowing more trees? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that. There's going to be a number of things that are going to influence the actual number of trees that get installed. First of all, and you touched on quite a few of them, utilities, both above and below ground, and the spacing of trees. In speaking with Brad Hoffman, they look for between 40 and 55 feet of space between street trees to provide enough room for them to breathe both above and below ground. We also have to factor in aerial apparatus access for the building, which can affect how much of the street facades can be encumbered by tree canopy. So you factor in, other above ground things like overhead streetlights, plus the street trees. The fire department generally mandates how much of a facade can be encumbered before it can no longer be used for aerial apparatus access. So all of those things kind of factor in to whether or not a number of street trees shown on a plan can actually be installed. Something that will happen at this point moving forward is if the project is approved with the new conditions, they'll work with city staff to work through what the plans and specifications for the project will be in the right-of-way. That'll include a tree planting plan that will be approved by city forestry. That may end up being part of the plans that are approved by the Board of Public Works and the Common Council, depending on timing, at which point we'll have a better understanding of how many trees can be planted and where, so that you get a clearer picture. I believe that even the applicant conceded that perhaps their landscape architect got a little free with the number of trees that they showed, which is why he wanted the cautionary note put in my report, so that there wasn't a higher expectation of the number of trees than will actually be installed, so to sort of temper enthusiasm.
Okay, thank you. I hope in those future negotiations and discussions that we can try to squeeze as many as we can. And this isn't exactly a beautiful green space now, so I hope there are ways to fit a couple more in. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, do we have a motion? Commissioner Cantrell.
Yes, I'll recommend that the Plan Commission find the standards met and approve the demolition and the conditional uses to construct a 6-story mixed-use building at 1858 to 1890 East Washington Avenue, and recommend approval of the one-lot CSM to the Common Council, subject to the conditions within the staff report on both the conditional use demolition and the CSM.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do I have a second? Seconded by Alder Lemmer. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, just briefly, this continues to be an excellent redevelopment site for this very visible corner. And I think it's, again, a great project and very happy to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there further comments or thoughts on this project? Seeing no raised hands, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 5, Legistar 64750, 12 North Few Street, 2nd Alder District, Urban Design District 8, consideration of a demolition permit to allow a portion of a street-facing facade to be demolished and for a 2-story addition containing 8 commercial spaces and 8 apartments to be constructed. I believe we have a presentation by staff, Chris Wells. Chris?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Plan Commission. At its May 24th, 2021 meeting, the Plan Commission referred to this item to a future Plan Commission meeting pending final approval by the Urban Design Commission. With the motion to refer, the Plan Commission noted the following concerns. Number 1, the proposed site circulation. 2, the lack of specifics regarding the programming of the patio area along Curtis Court. 3, the lack of specifics regarding the location of the on-site bicycle parking. And 4, the inadequate supply of the trash dumpsters for the building's uses. While the changes have been outlined in the staff report addendum, I will go through a brief overview. Regarding the concerns about site circulation and the programming along Curtis Court, to remove the ambiguity that stemmed from having 4 residentially allocated automobile parking stalls located immediately in front of the 4 commercial spaces, those 4 stalls have been eliminated and replaced with benches and additional landscaping. Additionally, to better distinguish the commercial entries from the residential entries, transom windows and projecting canopies have been added above the commercial entries. Regarding the location of the on-site bicycle stalls, those have been shown on the updated plan, but there are 17 on site, 7 located at the western corner of the site, 2 located along the building's southwest facade, and 1 long-term stall located just inside each of the residential entries, basically at the base of the stairs. Regarding the trash dumpsters, the applicant believes that the 8 96-gallon bins, 4 for trash and 4 for recycling, are sufficient. Staff notes that with these changes at their July 28th meeting and with a unanimous vote, the Urban Design Commission recommended final approval. There was a condition, but it's not overly significant right now, but it is included in the staff report addendum. Lastly, staff again note that other than requiring a demolition permit, technically a technical demolition because of the 1 street-facing wall, the proposed building is a permitted use. However, as commercial tenants' spaces lease up, conditional uses may be required at that time. Staff believes that the modifications and additional information provided in the revised materials have improved the proposal related to the previously raised concerns of the Plan Commission. Given the changes outlined above and the unanimous approval granted by the Urban Design Commission on July 28th, Planning Division recommends that the Plan Commission find the standards met and approve the demolition permit request to allow a portion of the street-facing facade to be demolished and the 2-story addition containing 8 commercial spaces and 8 apartments to be constructed. This recommendation is subject to the input at this public hearing and the conditions from reviewing agencies in the May 24th staff report and the condition added by the UDC at their July 28th meeting, and again, as noted in the August 23rd staff report addendum. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Chris. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is John Belknap, Curtis Court, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. John, you have 3 minutes.
I just wanted to mention that I have attended every neighborhood UDC and Plan Commission meeting and made several suggestions. And I wish much success to the owner of this property. However, I cannot approve of it. I expect the Plan Commission will approve it. It's a project which still has really significant defects, but the defects, lack of parking, obstruction of the intersection, lack of setback, no solid engineering study of how to build a second floor on top of a cement block curtain wall. Despite that, the major defects, I think, are with the city of Madison and its design for this block. And so I do not approve of the project, and we will have to move on to a barrage of complaints about the finished project. Those are all of my comments.
Thank you, John. The next registrant is Karen Banaszak, Curtis Court, Madison, neither support nor opposed, and wishing to speak. Karen, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, first of all, I've not seen a picture of where those bicycle racks will go. And as always, I'm on my one-horse pony of protecting the street trees. So that's one thing. And also wanted to say at the last minute here that silver maple in the corner that they are intending to save, it isn't looking real good right now. I'm wasting my time, but and wondered if the evergreens could be saved instead of that silver maple. So I would like to see a picture where the bike racks are, and what is the one condition the gentleman said still has to be met. And also, I don't know if this is the place to say again about staging on Curtis Court and that it's an inappropriate place to stage construction, streets not in good repair, and it's actually an alley. And then the other thing I wanted to say was to congratulate Randy and his family for working so hard to do this. And as always, I wished it to be a success. I wish whatever concerns to be met. And also to say to Randy and his family, now that you've cemented your plans, that the WYSO has kind of stole your idea about a winged building, and they're having a winged building, it looks like. So anyway, isn't that like life? So I guess that was pretty much it. And so trees will stay the same. That's my one horse pony. Bye.
Thank you, Karen. Are there any questions of any of our 3 registrants? Chris, you raised your hand.
Just to clarify, John Seaman, the architect for the project, has not had a chance to speak yet. Before you close the hearing.
I'm sorry. John Seaman. South Oakland Road, Oakland, Wisconsin, representing Jeremy Knudsen. And you have 3 minutes.
John, you should be unmuted. John, you're unmuted on our end. I see that you're unmuted in Zoom, but you may have a mute button on your device that you're using to communicate with. But you are unmuted in Zoom.
John, we're hoping to hear from you.
Chair, it looks like there's the issue with John's audio. He is unmuted in Zoom. My suggestion, is that you, John?
John.
I don't think I think. Yeah, I don't think it's working, John. You may want to just exit the meeting and then return to the meeting and see if that helps.
Okay, this is what we're going to do. Hopefully that will work for John. And in the interim, are there questions of either John Belknap or Karen Banaszak? Seeing no raised hands, I'm going to leave the public hearing open. And hopefully John will be able to access. And I'm going to ask, are there questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. It may be that Chris Wells can answer this question. I'm thinking about one of the public commenters mentioned about the relatively small size of Curtis Court. It's a pretty narrow street with not a lot of space. And can you describe what process will be followed as the eventual contractor will decide where construction equipment will access the site, assuming it's approved, and how they weigh the options? Is that all done through engineering typically?
Chris, can you respond to that, please?
I believe it's through traffic engineering. I'm not familiar with the kind of selection criteria. I don't know if Heather has any thoughts on.
Heather, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I mean, most significant projects will have a construction staging plan that's reviewed carefully and then signed off on by traffic engineering. And traffic engineering has some very high priorities about maintaining sidewalks throughout the duration of construction. If not on both sides of the street, at least on one. But generally, this, in some of our more significant projects, this is where you'll see the pedestrian pathway, the sidewalk covered with a temporary, almost scaffolding, protection for the duration of a significant project. For this project, which is much, much smaller in scale, I'm not certain what traffic engineering would be looking at aside from ensuring multimodal access and safety for all modes of travel in the area. And unfortunately, I don't know the details. The staff that typically review those from traffic engineering aren't in attendance, but we do have a traffic engineer here this evening, Mark Winter. And Mark, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any more detailed thoughts on that, please feel free to jump in.
Mark, if you would like to comment on that, could you raise your hand, please? Okay, Mark, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that Heather said it very well at the time. So we haven't reviewed anything for this particular site yet, but when we do, we're going to look very carefully to make sure we can get the best accommodations we can.
Thank you, Mark. And I would just comment, traffic engineering is very good to work with the Alder to come up with the best plan. So thank you, traffic engineering. Did you have any further questions, Alder Heck?
Just a comment to let Mark know that I'd be happy to work with TE on this because I think it's a rather unique situation, and I'd like to keep lines of communication open about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alder, and thank you, Mark Winter. Commissioner Fernandez.
So this is another one of my questions reflecting my my greenness to this whole situation. But I've read a couple of comments and heard that there's no parking. So we have 4 residential, 4 commercial units, and no parking, off-street parking. Is this? I just want to ask staff: is this normal? Is there are there conditions under which you're likely to approve this, or perhaps is this a situation where the applicant does not even need to establish parking? Maybe just a quick primer on why in this case they would have those 8 units with no parking.
Heather, I see your hand is up. Did you want to comment on that?
Sure. Just to mention that in some of our zoning districts, parking is not required. All of the downtown districts are some examples of that. And also the commercial corridor transitional or CCT district is another example where we don't have a minimum parking requirement at all. And that was thought of very carefully, actually, when the zoning code was redone almost a decade ago now. There was a strong push to make sure that our zoning requirements around parking weren't causing the city to be overparked, development by development, that we weren't forcing too much parking. And this is an example where the size of the building is such, and it's in a zoning district where there's simply not any parking requirement. And so I would say it's not common. Usually the market is driving the presence of at least some parking, but it's certainly nothing that is counter to the zoning requirements.
Thank you, Heather. Did you have any further or follow-up questions, Commissioner Fernandez?
No, thank you. That was a perfect explanation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions of staff? Okay, I'm wondering now if technical facilitator, if Jesse, we've been able to get John Seaman connected.
Yes, John is back on and unmuted. So John, we can give that a try.
John, can you say hello?
Yep,
yes,
we can hear you.
Yes, we can. Wonderful. Okay, you have 3 minutes, John.
Well, I'll be very, very brief. Much has been said about this project just tonight. I think you guys have covered a lot of ground. I want to primarily make myself available for questions. The second slide is the context. The third slide is the context. If you go to the fourth slide, Chris, that would be great. The one previous. That's the area in blue that we're looking to demolish. Our attempt in this project, one of the primary goals is to not remove the majority of this building. We'd like to reuse it. We'd like adaptive reuse. We like the sustainability. Next slide.
Did you have
to go to the next slide?
Okay.
Chris, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. This is the first floor, and a lot has been talked about relative to off-street parking. We have a large space facing Curtis Court that's well landscaped. It's really a nice congregation area. There are benches, plantings, a lot of pervious pavers, and the trash bins are on the left side and left. Again, we have 8 96-gallon containers. There's a question about bike stalls. We have 8 interior bike stalls for residential units. On the bottom of the plan, you can see those inside the vestibule. And then we have outdoor bike stalls in the plan, along with two bike stalls just south of the trash and recycle. Next slide. Second floor units. Next slide, please. this outlines a lot of those direct paths. So everything in blue you're seeing is commercial entries. All the commercial entries have transom windows and canopies above them to really differentiate them visually as units versus the residential. Next slide, please. All of these entries, these are two of the facades. All of these entries are, the entire building, excuse me, is 24/7 monitored. We have 10 surveillance cameras around it. We have just done LED lighting around all of the buildings as well. And we have some pretty clear signage with a convex mirror at the corner in the back left to have visual connection on the line. Next slide, please.
Thank you, John. That concludes your available time. Are there any questions by plan commissioners of any of our three registrants before I close the public hearing? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is a question for John. And John, I'd encourage you to speak up a little bit. We're kind of having a hard time hearing you. There was a comment in public comment about the location of the exterior bicycle racks. I know there are some on the west side of the building, just off of Curtis Court, and where there was at least one more that was an exterior bike rack, maybe over on the other corner of the building. Was there mention of a bike rack, or are they all on that side?
Thanks for asking. No, they're not all on that side. There's a grouping in the upper left corner Chris was highlighting. There's also a grouping of two below the trash and recycle pergola. And then there's 8 separate additional bike stalls in the entry vestibules for the residential units.
So I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. Did you say that all of the exterior stalls are on that west side of the building?
Yes, all of the exterior stalls are on the west side of that building.
That's what I was after. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions, Alder?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cantrell.
One of the speakers raised a question about trees on the property that that you may be keeping or not keeping. Could you elaborate on that issue?
Sure, I'd be happy to. There are 3 existing trees at the corner of Northview and Curtis Court, rather large, fairly mature trees that the neighborhood is very clear that they'd like to keep. I mean, they kind of see the corner as a bit of a park, the green space, and we get it. We're happy to keep those. 2 of those are in the right of way. One of those is just inside our property line. Again, you can see them on the on this plan, and those are the primary trees that have been part of the discussion. We're happy to leave them. I'm sorry to hear that the maple is not doing well. I was out there recently a week ago, and that did not catch my eye. I'm sorry to hear that.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner Cantrell?
Well, I'm assuming that the trees that are shown are mostly in the right-of-way along Northview and Curtis Court. And there's one tree at the corner that looks like it's on private property that I assume is going to remain because it's not shown as being cut down. I'm assuming that's correct. So maybe the architect or the owner can just say yes, if that's correct, or
John, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Are there any other questions of registrants? Alder Heck.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to just seek clarification again on those trees. And it may be that Chris Wells might have to get involved in the conversation, but those three trees are going to stay is what the agreement is. And that's, I think, in the development agreement. I believe that it's a little bit confusing as to whether they're in the right of way or not, because it's kind of a strange corner. There's no sidewalk there currently. So, and traffic engineering have agreed that there's not a need to have the sidewalk extend all the way to North Few Street. So the sidewalk will kind of end prematurely, given that there really isn't a lot of pedestrian traffic on Curtis Court, especially on that side. There will be more in the future, of course, but I want to make sure I understand who owns those three trees and who's responsible for them if they are indeed going to stay. And another question would be, if the maple does die, if it's on city property, it seems likely that it wouldn't be replaced. If it's on private property, it could be replaced. So I kind of just want some clarification on the future of those trees and who's responsible for them.
Chris Wells, I think you might be best positioned to respond to that in terms of whose property are those trees on?
I would defer to John, and assuming this is a survey showing, and this light blue dashed line is the property line. I think this tree and this tree are in the public right of way, and so if they were to die and the city forester believed that the location was ideal, I believe, I'll check the conditions in the report, but the city would be in charge of replacing them. The one at the corner, it's for the property owner to replace, given the sensitivity, the fact that it is in the vision triangle, that there might be argument from traffic engineering not to replace it, but that said, as mentioned in the last meeting, traffic engineering was comfortable enough not to have those trees removed from the start. So,
okay. Thank you, Chris. John, did you have anything to add? John
Yes. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Chris, if you go to slide 10, that is the landscape plan. I think it'll more clearly define and answer these questions about where these existing trees are, as well as species for the group. So the two large ones are in the right of way. The maple is just inside the property line. So if you zoom into that area, you can more clearly see those existing trees we're asking for in the proposal to remain.
Does that answer your question, Alder Heck?
It does. I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that the maple isn't in good health and what will happen should it be removed. Honestly, I think it's something we're going to have to deal with in the future, potentially, because I can imagine forestry not wanting a replacement tree there if it's impacting the street tree. So it's a little bit of a complicated situation.
Okay, thank you. Did you have any further questions, Alder?
No, thank you.
Any further questions of registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We've already gone through questions of staff, but are there further questions of staff? Chris, did you have something else you wanted to add? I see your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to mention condition 48 in the May 24th staff report, coming from the city forester stating that additional trees are needed. I don't know where along, I'm guessing perhaps down here that there would be a space, but there will be additional street trees needed. They're looking for more information, and they will, they're requesting a landscape plan to be submitted for approval by the city forester in regards to those planting locations. So this will be examined further.
Thank you for adding that, Chris. Are there any other questions of staff? Seeing no raised hands, I would be looking for a motion. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I'll move approval of the demolition permit for this development proposal. And I think that might be all I need with associated conditions in the development agreement if necessary.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Cantrell is seconding that? Yes. Okay. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Alder Heck?
Just briefly, yes. Thank you. This redevelopment has been a little stressful, I think, for all of the neighbors along Curtis Court, and it's going to continue to be stressful, as you heard, because it is such a little street, and the construction process, I think, will be something I'll need to help manage as Alder, and I'll commit to doing so. I think it's actually a unique looking building, and that the reuse, the partial demolition is an important feature of it. I know that one of the neighbors is concerned about the engineering related to the retaining this part of the current structure. This is only a partial demolition, as we've said, but I think that the city will follow that closely, and I think those concerns will be alleviated. So I'm supporting this and hope you will too. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Any other input from any of the plan commissioners? Seeing none, we'll come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, Legistar 66120, located at 5535 University Avenue, Urban Design District 6, 19th Alder District. Consideration of a demolition permit to demolish a grocery store. Consideration of a conditional use to construct a mixed-use building with over 24 dwelling units in the neighborhood mixed-use district. Consideration of a conditional use for a building in the NMX district exceeding 3 stories and 40 feet in height, and consideration of a conditional use for a building in the NMX district modifying the allowed rear yard height transition to a residential district to construct a mixed-use building with 2,735 square feet of commercial space and 66 apartments. Okay, I believe we will have a presentation by city staff. Chris Wells, you're up again, Chris.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This is the third iteration of this development. In January 2018, the Planning Commission approved a proposal for a mixed-use building with 56 units and about 5,600 square feet of commercial space. And later that year in November, the Plan Commission approved a proposal with 60 units and about 5,600 square feet. This evening, the applicant requests approval of a proposal to demolish the existing grocery store and conduct a mixed-use building with 66 units and about 2,700 square feet. However, please note that late Friday afternoon, the applicant submitted an updated ground floor plan showing an enlarged commercial space, now about over 800 square feet larger and totaling 3,560 square feet. The enlarged commercial area does not replace it does not change the unit count or the unit mix. I sent out an email this morning. I apologize for the late email. That said, the zoning administrator has determined that the updated site plan satisfies the condition requiring non-residential uses to occupy at least 50% of the ground floor frontage facing the primary street. So that conditional use, I think it was the number 5 in the previous staff report, that is no longer on the table. It's satisfied. However, the 3 conditional uses in the NMX district for 24 units, the building exceeding 3 stories and 40 feet in height, and then the rear transition, those are still valid. A number of public comments have been received for this item and attached to the public record. Regarding traffic-related concerns, staff note that the previous approval on this site included a second egress onto University Avenue. Even with that egress eliminated with this new proposal, based on their observation and data provided by the applicant's consultants, traffic engineering believes the Capitol Avenue, University Avenue intersection will be able to accommodate the increase in traffic which will be generated by this development. And as you are all aware, Mark Winter from Traffic Engineering is with us this evening, and I would certainly defer to him for any further traffic-related questions after the public hearing. Given the late changes just mentioned, the Plan Commission recommends that the Plan Division recommends that the Plan Commission find that the standards can be met and approve the demolition permit and 3 conditional use requests to demolish a grocery store before constructing a 4-story mixed-use building with 3,564 square feet of commercial space. These recommendations are subject to the public hearing and the comments in the August 23rd staff report. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Chris. I will open the public hearing. The first registrant is Kevin Burrow, University Avenue, Middleton, supporting, wishing to speak, representing Kanofi Bruce Architects. Kevin.
Good evening. Chris, if you could call up the presentation slides.
And once those are up, you'll have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I will just quickly walk you through the changes that have transpired. As Chris described, this was previously approved a couple of years ago, and we have requested some extensions, but now we are to the point where we need to update our approvals to move this forward. So the site is shown in the center of the screen here, highlighted in red. It's the existing or former Brennan's Market site at the intersection of Capitol University. Next slide, please. So I just want to highlight the proposed changes. In the previous design that was approved, we had parking underneath a portion of the building, highlighted in orange, and then a second egress out onto University. But this would be a right in, right out only, no left turn option there because of the median. Next slide. With the revised design, we are able to eliminate that as we have reduced the amount of commercial space and no longer need that additional parking. So we have our access off of Capitol Avenue as shown in this slide, and we are able to provide additional green space then as a buffer to our neighboring property. Next slide. Here's the landscaping plan that's been updated. And we have also created a larger outdoor patio space on the north end of the building along Capitol Avenue at the intersection, which is directly in front of the major commercial space. Next slide. Here's a previously approved plan, again, with the commercial space shown on the upper left-hand corner, and then the under-building parking, basically open-air parking that existed on the lower end. Next slide. With the revised plan, now we have reduced the commercial space and introduced an additional 6 units to the building by filling in that parking area and then taking a small portion of the commercial space. But as was mentioned by Chris, we have maintained the frontage along University Avenue to cover at least 50% of the front facade. So we are up to 66 units with this design and 3,500 square feet of commercial space. Next slide. Previous basement plan is shown here where we had parking of 52 stalls. Next slide. With the revised plan, we are able to enlarge the basement and gain additional parking. So now we're up to 57 parking stalls by providing parking underneath that plaza area. Next slide. The upper floor plans are shown here. These are unchanged from the previous design, so we can just move forward. Next slide. This third floor is the same. Fourth floor of the building still does step back all along University Avenue as was previously designed. Next slide. So as far as the exterior design goes, this is a previously approved plan. We can jump to the next slide. You'll see that the design is basically maintained with additional landscaping amenities and that outdoor plaza area, but the facade design is the same. Next slide. Again, the front facade previously approved. Next slide. And then the new design, again, just enhanced with additional landscaping, but the overall architecture and design of the building is the same. Next slide.
Thank you, Kevin. That concludes your available time. Our next registrant is Liz Fretdick, Capitol Avenue, Madison, opposed and wishing to speak. Liz, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, there is no person in attendance by that name.
Okay, the next registrant is Cindy Johnson, Capitol Avenue, Madison, neither support nor opposed and wishing to speak. Cindy, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the time. I sent some written comments to the city feedback email. I'm not sure if you guys received it or not. I still have concerns about the increase in traffic on Capitol. My comments in my written statement are that Capitol is, despite what the experts are saying, Capitol is a fairly congested street, and adding an additional amount of residential, multi-unit residential will put pressure on our community, on our little neighborhood. And I would just hope that the Plan Commission would be open to some sort of traffic congestion mitigation should this development put more pressure on the street that we live upon. And I did in my written comments also say that I am not opposed to the development in its structure. I do feel strongly that the getting the development there instead of a vacant grocery store is a great idea. I'm just a little concerned about the pressure on the community, especially with traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. The next registrant is Martin O'Connor, Edmonton Drive, Sun Prairie, in support, wishing to speak, and representing University Avenue LLC. Martin, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I'm actually representing the ownership and development team. Want to thank the city and the commission for continuing to work with us on this project. We have gone through a number of different versions, trying to get this to move forward over the last 3 years. Really, the challenge that has kept us from moving forward is the getting the demand for the commercial space that we had hoped for to get us comfort in moving forward with that. We have not seen the level of interest in that that we had hoped for, and also, we're definitely seeing, increases in our costs, driven by both, the amount of the commercial space, and then also that driveway that was designed under the building, which really was designed when we were looking at much higher traffic-driven commercial space. One of the original plans was focused more on trying to have a drive-through, and without the drive-through being necessary, that definitely reduces our costs and allows us to hopefully move forward here. We certainly understand the traffic concerns that the neighborhood has. It's a very busy street there, busy intersection. I think, we're really relying on the city staff and the engineering team to tell us if that's viable or not. We just appreciate everyone working with us on this, and, we're excited to move things forward on the site. I know everyone in the neighborhood would really like to see the vacant building gone. So thank you.
Thank you. We have one more registrant, Human Sedane, Capitol Avenue, Madison, opposed, not wishing to speak, but available to answer questions. Are there questions of any of our registrants? Questions of any of the registrants? Seeing no raised hands, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask staff, I'm just curious, given the concerns about commercial space and the changes in demand of commercial space, what are the options for the developers if they can't fill it? Uses for that space or anything like that? I'm just curious.
Chris Wells.
I would invite speak for the applicant, but they have talked about getting in public exercise, like a small fitness gym in there. And I know they have been talking about a user for the majority of that commercial space, but part of it would be a co-working space potentially. And also a public gym component, because that's the one thing that with the increase of space, increase of overall commercial space, they shifted one of the units and there's no gym anymore in the building, but they believe that they can offset that with potentially a small gym that would also be available and open to the public.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any further questions, Commissioner Spencer? No. Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Seeing no further questions of staff.
I have a motion.
Okay, very good.
I recommend that the Plan Commission find that the standards can be met and approve the demolition and the 3 remaining conditional use requests to demolish a grocery store for the construction of a 4-story mixed-use building at 5535 University Avenue, subject to the conditions within the staff report.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. Commissioner Cantrell, did you wish to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, again, this is a really good, redevelopment site for this property. And it's providing apartments along a very busy street where we would expect to see them. And I guess I'm not too concerned about the amount of commercial use here, the mixed use. I'm glad that they're providing to meet the standard. but it's quite difficult, as we've seen in other mixed-use buildings, of providing commercial on the first floor. My hope in the future that there would be a lot of uses that would find spaces like this very desirable. But I think that the development team has done a good job in addressing the city requirement in that respect. And this is a very attractive mixed-use building, in my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Cantrell. Alder Furman, did you wish to speak at all to the Plan Commission?
Thank you, Chair. This project has been interesting. There's obviously we're on the several versions in at this point. I will be honest, I do like the previous version a lot more than this version, meaning the previously approved version, but do appreciate the developer making last minute changes to increase commercial. I'm going to have to disagree with Commissioner Cantrell about the commercial aspect. I do think that if we can't have successful commercial at the corner of Capitol and University, we're going to struggle to have commercial in other parts of our city. I do think right now we are in a position where, yes, commercial is going to struggle. We are trying to figure out what the new normal is post-COVID, but this is a building that's going to be here for decades. And so I do appreciate very, very much that the developer has increased the amount of commercial, and I'm hopeful that we get some good options there. That was one of the big pieces of feedback that I did receive at the neighborhood meeting was the commercial, and again, I think that's been addressed well with the increase. The other thing that I think, for me at least, the verdict is still out, but traffic engineering is not overly concerned, is just the one entrance and exit. The previous plan did have that entrance and exit on University, which I think it is certainly would have been incredibly helpful for the development. I think having just one on Capitol is a concern of the neighbors and the neighborhood, and I share that concern. But traffic engineering does believe that it will be okay. So those are my thoughts, and appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Commissioner Cantrell, did you have anything else you wanted to add? No.
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. So I just like to say, I support the project. I really appreciate the tremendous hard work that staff has put in with the revisions, and I think it's generally a good project. I'm very dismayed as a new Plan Commission member to hear that filling even a small amount of commercial space on a very busy street is a problem. So this is not to propose anything, and I'm going to support the proposal, but I really would like to see Plan Commission continue to hold the line on percentage of commercial space where possible, because it would seem to me that every space is rentable at some price. So there's it may be that they can't get their target rent from it, but I think that the use is appropriate, and at some point, if the target rent comes down a little, the users will be found, and I really would like to see us continue to maintain retail commercial in places like this that clearly seem appropriate for it. But other than that, I support the proposal, and I'm not trying to torpedo what's obviously a lot of hard work here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote. I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our zoning text amendments. Agenda item 20, Legistar 66790, creating section 28.101 Mission Camp District, amending section 28.211 to define Mission Camp, and amending section 28.151, providing supplemental regulations to Mission Camps. And I believe that Heather Stouter will be giving us a brief overview. Heather.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. I first want to credit Matt Tucker, who's unable to be with us this evening, for doing a lot of work with sponsors on this set of ordinances. We do have two of the sponsoring alders here tonight, Alders Foster and Heck. This is also sponsored by Alder Figueroa Cole and the mayor. And basically, it's a package of 3 interrelated zoning text amendments, none of which are associated with a particular site. They're before you this evening for a recommendation to the Common Council, and they'll take these up at their August 31st meeting next Tuesday. The first is a new district called Mission Camp District, which allows for a new type of housing in the city that's not allowable today, and that's a campground. I know that many of you have been following the local media regarding campgrounds and understand that currently, again, this is not an allowable use in any of our districts in the city today. So what this does, rather than looking at existing zoning districts and creating a new way for this use to be allowable, is that it actually creates a brand new zoning district, unattached at this point to any certain piece of land in the city. And just as an example, or just as a comparison, I can mention the city does have a couple of other districts that are either not yet mapped at all or mapped in very few areas. One is the newly created Regional Mixed Use District. Another is the Urban Agriculture District that was created about a decade ago. So again, this is a brand new zoning district for mission camps. And that would be basically, a campground, would allow other types of portable housing as well to be managed by the city and nonprofit entities. Next is the creation of a second district, which many of you are very familiar with because you've seen them as individual planned development districts, and that's the Portable Shelter Mission District. Many of you are really familiar with what Occupy Madison has done, and now 2 locations. Up on Aberg is the latest one, and then another one on 3rd Street. And both of those involved planned developments that were, recommended by the Plan Commission, ultimately adopted by the council, site-specific zoning for the establishment of both of those uses. In this case, the city would create a zoning district for portable shelter, for tiny house villages. This is the second one. And so this is something that is allowable in 2 cases within the city, but we think that the creation of this new zoning district will make it much easier to establish a tiny house village because of its built-in supplemental regulations, et cetera, so that it won't be done on such a case-by-case basis. And the hope is that folks will be able to establish this use with greater ease in other sites across the city. And then the third amendment has to do with an accessory use, which is the portable shelter mission. And today, in today's code, this is already allowable in all residential use districts as a conditional use. One has yet to be established in the city. And what it is it's basically, if you think of it as an accessory small campground facility that would be associated with a religious institution, a nonprofit organization, or a government entity, but it would be accessory to another building. So not a standalone campground, but accessory to something else. This particular amendment actually greatly expands the locations throughout the city where portable shelter mission could be established as an accessory use. Today, it's only in the residential districts. And with this amendment, it would be added as a permitted use in all of the mixed use, many of the downtown districts, employment districts. And importantly, even in our residential districts, it would be changed from a conditional to a permitted use to create an easier path forward for the establishment of these housing types, again, which either aren't allowed today within the city or have a very difficult path to get to their establishment. Again, it looks like the third Alder, Figueroa Cole, is here now as well. So we have all three sponsoring Alders with us this evening. Lynette Rhodes from Community Development is here as well and may be able to address some questions if there are questions from commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Heather's covered all three. I will read the last two into the record, and we'll talk about these all at the same time then, basically, because they do, I think, have a tendency to interact a bit. So agenda item 21, Legistar 66791, creating section 28.070 Tiny House Village District, amending section 28.061 Table 28D2 to include the Tiny House Village District and specific uses within that district, amending section 28.211 definitions to create a definition of tiny house village and tiny house, and amending section 28.151 supplemental regulations to provide regulations for tiny house villages. And then agenda item 22, Legistar 66792, amending section 28.151 supplemental regulations portable shelter mission to allow a governmental entity to establish a portable shelter mission and to update references to the Wisconsin Administrative Code, and amending Chapter 28, Tables 28C1, 28D2, 28E2, 28F1, and 28G1 to allow portable shelter mission as a permitted accessory use in all zoning districts. And before we go to questions of staff, it's my understanding that we had one late registrant, Brenda Conkle, North Hancock, Madison, in support and wishing to speak. Brenda, you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I had just a few quick comments. My last one probably is the most important. But on the mission camp ordinance, I just wanted to make sure the language was really clear that if a project might be like primarily funded by the county, does the city have to like pay $1 to make this a permitted use and have it be part of the permitted use? Or like, I guess when we're out there looking for funding, do we need to seek city and county funding in order to get the permitted use? I was wondering why this is limited to 30 tents, and I'm wondering if it should say 30 sites. And I'm wondering if there can be more than one tent per site, because many people sleep in one tent and store their things in another tent. Also, I'm wondering if you might want to consider the size of the property. So 30 sites on a small property is going to be a whole lot different than 30 sites on a larger property. And maybe you want to consider doing units per acre. And then for the annual management plan, I'm just a little bit worried that, for the first 5 years, we'll remember to do it. But after a while, volunteers come and go from our organization, and I'm afraid they may forget to do the management plan. So I just want to make sure that if it's annually renewed, that there's some sort of a system in place that makes it easy for a volunteer organization. On the tiny house villages, there were several uses that we agreed to in our original PUD that we had gotten approved. And I'm wondering if you might consider not using that as the template or thinking about some of them. The first one is about tarps. We often use tarps for temporary uses, but they're not for construction purposes. And again, I did send all of these comments in writing to the Plan Commission, so you can read them there. So I'm kind of shorthanding this. For recreational fires, it would be nice if we could be treated just like everybody else. It's sort of an equity issue, and just have us follow the regular Madison general ordinances that exist for everybody else. A lot of people ask us about composting toilets and why they're not allowed when we get tours from people who are thinking about setting up their own villages. I'm not really, I do know why, because a couple of the neighbors were upset about it, but I'm not sure that it wouldn't be a really good idea for some of our older residents. I think it would really enhance the quality of life for them. I think overnight guests should be allowed in the houses our residents date and have partners and have kids that visit and things like that. And then last, I would say that the operating hours that we set for our wood shop are very different than the operating hours that we will set for when we have a coffee shop. So I'm wondering if that could just be part of the management plan. And then lastly, on the portable mission shelter, just two quick comments. One is that the reason this hasn't been used is a lot of the religious organizations that talked to us early on couldn't use the ordinance because it had to be accessory, and accessory means it has to be contiguous to the parcel that their church is on. And a lot of them had a site that was across the street or that wasn't part of their parcel, but it was next door to them, or something that was prohibiting them from being able to use the portable mission shelter ordinance. And then just lastly, I was just curious why it says they shall provide worship or supportive services, but for the mission camp, it says they may. And that would conclude my comments. Again, I did forward them all to you so that you can read them in writing as well.
Thank you, Brenda. And we do have one other registrant, Beth Furin, North Division Street, Wanakee, in support, not wishing to speak, but supporting all three of those amendments. Are there questions of either of our registrants? Are there questions of either of our registrants? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions of staff? Alder Heck.
Thank you. This is likely for Heather. We don't have anybody from the city attorney's office here, but you might be able to help. I'm thinking about many of the points that Brenda Conkle brought up that are the vast majority of them are small tweaks that don't change the purpose and the meaning behind these changes. So I'm wondering if, honestly, I'm not prepared to try to alter the proposed zoning text on the fly at this meeting, because I think we would need to think through those a little bit. So I'm wondering if it's possible to consider recommending approval of these zoning text changes at Plan Commission, yet allow for the possibility of them being altered slightly without having to come back to Plan Commission.
Heather.
I'm sorry, fighting over the mute button. Yes, Alder Heck, that's definitely possible. I think if the Plan Commission wants to give some indication to the nature of the changes, that's fine. But any changes, large or small, could be made as either a substitute by the sponsors. So with sponsorship from one or more of the sponsoring alders or the mayor, or there could be an alternate that comes about from another alder who's not already listed as a sponsor. So, my best, recommendation for moving forward is that sponsoring alders may want to get together, look at these comments, and pull together a substitute in advance of Tuesday's Common Council meeting, if the Plan Commission recommends that the ordinances move forward.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you, Alder Heck, and thank you, Heather, for that. Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you. I had pretty much the same question, but I guess let me modify it just a little bit. What would our motion look like if we wanted to? So we could recommend adoption pending review by planning and legal staff of comments recommended by Brenda Conkle. How do we do this to make sure that we move this forward and not cycle it back? Would it be better to simply bring this up at a subsequent Plan Commission meeting after those changes have been reviewed? recommended.
So my understanding is that there is some urgency in getting this before the council next week. And my best recommendation would be for the Plan Commission to vote on making a recommendation to adopt these ordinance changes. And then sponsoring alders may work to make small tweaks to them based on comments that they've heard at Plan Commission or elsewhere. So I don't think the Plan Commission needs to go into specificities. You could just simply recommend adoption of the ordinances as they are drafted. If the Plan Commission would like to signal some support for making them, more open or more user friendly, or even easier to establish some of these uses, you could do that with a just general note, but I don't think it's necessary.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. Commissioner Solheim.
I was just going to add to that and note, I assume that the substitute would be posted on this Legistar item, so we could check into that before the Tuesday council meeting to see what the changes were. Great, I'm seeing Heather nod. And I'd just like to add a comment. I think it was a good point about the accessory use and some lots that are not necessarily contiguous. I can just off the top of my head think of a few circumstances of that, and that seems like it might actually be a good spot for this. So that would be something I'd encourage folks to look at as well. But I appreciate the urgency to move this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cantrell.
I have a question about a couple aspects of the ordinance. On mission camps, this is a zoning district. So I'm assuming these uses are permanent, but they're tents. So there's some transient element there. It's not a tent is not a permanent structure. So I guess I'm just wondering, is there provisions for, allowing, people to move and come back, or move and another individual move in? And I'm assuming the city is going to be, or the nonprofit in this case for mission camps, is going to be governing all these technical aspects. And the other question is, what about storms, major storms? Is there a permanent building? I'm assuming that's in the management plan, that these individuals in tents will be able to get out of their tent and maybe take some of their belongings to a permanent structure or basement so that, they won't be blown away in a tornado.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the way the ordinance is drafted, it's not limited solely to tents. In the Mission Camp District, it could be tents for temporary or permanent use, or it could also be portable shelter units, which are more permanent in nature, and could be constructed very quickly, placed on site, and really serve folks year-round, perhaps easier than a typical tent would for obvious reasons in this climate. I think that your question about the storm is a very good one, and I'm trying to scroll to that language. This is something that was discussed for for the management plan, and I believe the thought was that there would need to be a plan for safety, access to a safe space during a storm, but it's not necessarily that there needs to be a permanent building on site to serve those residents. I am just scrolling here, and if any of the sponsoring alders have that language handy, that would be great.
Sponsoring alder, Heck, do you have that?
It's sub E1.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, there's a severe weather response.
Okay.
Okay, okay, good. So this could be a development of tiny houses as well.
It could be. Yes. Most of the tiny house developments that we've seen, I would say, have fairly permanent, very well insulated structures. There's a lot of room between a tent and the tiny houses that are established by Occupy Madison today. There are a lot of different structures in the middle of those two. And I think that a lot of these portable shelter units fall in the middle of that spectrum.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm assuming that the portable shelter mission, it's actually getting at the same thing, but it's connected with the building, basically. Okay.
Yes. Not a standalone, but an accessory use to something else.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Alder Foster.
Thank you, Chair. In response to Commissioner Cantrell's question about the sort of permanent nature with the mission camp district, I think perhaps just think of it as a campground, where the campground itself might be permanent, but those using it aren't necessarily there on a permanent basis. One of the components of that district is that it will need to qualify and hold a campground permit from the state, and that itself carries a number of specific requirements along with it. So I believe actually there is one of those requirements is that no individual can occupy the same site for more than 8 months at a time. So I think some of those things are already baked into some of the state requirements around campgrounds.
Thank you for that clarification, Alder Foster. That was helpful. Any other questions? Commissioner Spencer.
We were talking about provisions for severe weather, and I'm assuming that there's, along with storms and rain and that sort of thing, that there's something in there for extreme heat as well.
No, that's a good point. There is not anything at this time in there for extreme heat.
It's just we're getting more and more hot weeks. I feel like we have more hot weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that data bears that out. Yes, thank you.
That's a good point. And I think that could be easily folded into that E sub 1 as well.
Okay.
I guess, you know what? Severe weather plan, maybe that does capture it already at the end of sub E1 when I'm taking another look at it. So thanks for raising that.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Again, about that severe weather, just like Heather said, I think that is all baked in. And today, we actually have things in place for hot days. We don't have anything in place for a tornado, for example, which is kind of why it's so relevant that we make sure that the emergency plan covers in a holistic way any other, any natural disaster or situation like heat or below, like the cold times, the whatever vortex that we had a couple of years ago. But there's things in place already in the city that that covers, along with nonprofit organizations, that takes care of the excessive heat or the excessive cold. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions of staff? Commissioner Fernandez.
Again, thanks. Just a quick clarification from staff. So the first two create new zoning districts, not specific to any piece of land. So for them to be implemented, someone would have to go through the process of applying for rezoning. Is that correct? And then the third one would be applicable right now if the city chose to create some shelter adjacent to a building or something. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? Seeing no raised hands, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Solheim.
Is it allowable that we can do all three at once?
I think that would be fine.
Great. I will move that the Plan Commission recommend adoption of the zoning text amendments to create a mission camp district, tiny house village zoning district, and portable shelter mission land use change with a recommendation of approval by the council.
Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Heck. Did you wish to speak to your motion, Commissioner Solheim?
I just want to applaud staff for all of their work on this, and thank you to the sponsoring alders. I know that this required a fair bit amount of creativity, and I appreciate your work to get this done urgently.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there other comments or input? Commissioner Cantrell.
I also applaud the alders and staff on creating these districts and this permitted use. And I'm assuming that we're allowing city staff some flexibility in adding some adjustments to these ordinances with some of the comments that Brenda Kunkel brought up. I think that some of those were very, very good, and I would hope that many of those would be incorporated. And I don't think any of them were substantial to the purposes of these three ordinance changes or amendments. But anyway, I think hopefully this will solve some of the issues that we have within the city. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think as Heather pointed out, the sponsoring alders can work to get a substitute to incorporate some of those suggestions, which I think also have merit. So thank you, Commissioner. Are there other comments before we come to a vote? Seeing no raised hands, we will come to a vote. And we are voting on all three and to recommend to the council to move forward on these. And I think we're all expecting the sponsoring alders to take a look at some of the good suggestions and perhaps come up with a substitute. So we are supportive of that too. So we will then come to a vote on the motion. And I will assume unanimous consent unless I see raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands to object, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now, business by members. Is there any business that any of the members want to bring up? Seeing no raised hands, we'll go to the secretary's report. Heather.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. As you mentioned, Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, we're hoping to get a good turnout of Plan Commissioners this Wednesday for a 4:30 virtual tour of predominantly West Side projects that have been completed over the last few years. Hope you can join us for that. And then on September 20th, our next regular meeting, I'll just highlight a few things on the list. First, the additions to Memorial High School. So as you know, the MMSD has been coming to the Plan Commission with a series of projects related to their recent referendum. This is one of them. Another major project on the agenda for the 20th is at 341 State Street and West Forum and West Johnson. This is a rezoning, demolition, and involves a 10-story mixed-use building with 386 dwelling units and ground floor commercial space. And then the third one I'll mention, also from the Madison Metropolitan School District, is a renovation and additions to what is now Badger Rock Middle School, that building. to construct a Southside elementary school. So again, associated with their recent referendum. And then looking forward to October 4th, I'll just mention the top item on that list, and it's that we'll have a staff update at that time on the progress on the South Madison plan, and also on the Town of Madison attachment, which will be happening in October of next year. And so we want to take an opportunity to provide the Plan Commission with just an overview of what we've been working on as we, and by we, I mean the global we, throughout the city, all agencies prepare for the attachment of the Town of Madison. And I think that does it for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Then I would be looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Cantrell. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim. We will come to a vote, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Seeing no raised hands, we are adjourned. And thank you, everybody, again.